They built the largest tombs in human history, spent decades constructing them, used millions of workers, consumed entire national economies, all for dead people. Ancient Egypt, where the afterlife mattered more than life itself, where pharaohs spent their entire reign preparing to die, where common people starved building monuments for corpses, where priests controlled everything by controlling one thing: fear of what comes after. Because in Egypt, death wasn't the end. It was the beginning. And that belief built an empire, but it also trapped an entire civilization. So how did death become more powerful than life? The pyramids, massive, impossible, built 500 years ago. Millions of limestone blocks, each weighing tons, moved across deserts, lifted hundreds of feet, placed with perfect precision. Why? To protect one body, one dead pharaoh, for eternity. But here's what they don't tell you. The pyramids weren't just tombs, they were weapons, tools of control, built on a simple idea. If you control what happens after death, you control everything. 5,000 years ago, the Nile Valley was divided. Dozens of small kingdoms, fighting over water, over land, over survival. The Nile flooded every year, brought rich soil, made farming possible, but only in a narrow strip. Beyond that, desert, death, nothing. So everyone crowded along the river. Wars were constant, brutal, endless, until one king figured something out. You can't control people with force alone. Force requires armies. Armies cost money. Money runs out, but fear? Fear is free. And fear of death, that's eternal. So this king made a claim. He wasn't just a king. He was a god, the son of Ra, immortal, divine. And when he died, he would join the gods, rule the afterlife, judge the dead, decide who gets eternal life and who gets destroyed forever. Suddenly, obeying the king wasn't just political. It was spiritual. Disobey and you don't just lose your life, you lose your soul. Forever. That's not government. That's total control. Egypt unified, under one pharaoh, one god king, and the obsession with death began. Because if the pharaoh is divine, if he controls the afterlife, then keeping him alive forever becomes everything. Not metaphorically alive, actually alive. His body, his soul, his power, all preserved for eternity. So they invented mummification. 70 days. Remove the organs, except the heart. The heart stays, because that's where the soul lives. Dry the body with salt, wrap it in linen. Hundreds of layers, cover it in oils, gold, place it in a coffin, then another coffin, then another, then a stone sarcophagus, then a tomb, filled with everything the pharaoh needs: food, weapons, furniture, servants. Wait, servants? Yes. In the early dynasties, they killed them, buried them alive with the pharaoh. So he'd have company in the afterlife. Dozens of people, sometimes hundreds, murdered to serve a corpse. Later, they used statues instead. Shabtis, little figurines, magical servants. That would come to life in the afterlife. Do the pharaohs work for him? Because even in death, pharaohs didn't work. But here's the thing. This wasn't just about pharaohs. Everyone in Egypt believed it, rich and poor. They all wanted to live forever. They all feared judgment, the weighing of the heart. After you die, you stand before Osiris, god of the underworld. Your heart is placed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at, truth, justice. If your heart is lighter than the feather, you pass. Enter paradise, eternal life. But if your heart is heavier, weighed down by sin, a monster waits, Amit. Part crocodile, part lion, part hippo. She devours your heart, your soul. You cease to exist, forever. No second chance, just nothing. That's the ultimate fear, not death, oblivion. And the priests controlled it all. They decided what counted as sin. What made your heart heavy? They performed the rituals, spoke the spells, opened the mouth of the dead, so they could breathe in the afterlife. Without the priests, you had no chance. Your body would rot. Your soul would wander, lost, destroyed. So people paid, gave everything to the temples, land, gold, food, labor. The priests became the richest class in Egypt, more powerful than generals, because they controlled the one thing everyone needed: access to eternity. But let's talk about what this actually meant. For regular people, the farmers, the workers, the ones who built the pyramids, they didn't get elaborate tombs, didn't get mummification, couldn't afford it. Most were buried in the sand, simple graves, no protection, no chance. But they still had to work, had to build the pharaoh's tomb. Why? Because the pharaoh's survival meant Egypt's survival. If the God King lives forever, if he's happy in the afterlife, he'll protect Egypt, make the Nile flood, bring good harvests. But if he's unhappy, if his tomb is incomplete, disaster, famine, chaos. So building the pyramid wasn't slavery, it was salvation, national survival, and people believed it, worked willingly, died building monuments for a system that gave them nothing except fear and hope. But here's where it gets darker. The system had a problem. Tombs full of treasure, gold, jewels, everything valuable, buried underground. What happens? Tomb robbers. From the very beginning, people broke into pyramids, stole everything, desecrated the bodies, destroyed the afterlife. The pharaohs knew this, so they built traps, false passages, hidden chambers, curses, inscriptions warning of divine punishment, death to anyone who enters. Didn't work. Robbers kept coming. Because gold in your hand is worth more than curses. So the priests tried something else. They moved the tombs from pyramids to hidden valleys, the Valley of the Kings, secret locations, carved into cliffs, concealed. Still didn't work. Almost every tomb was robbed, within years of burial, sometimes by the workers who built them, sometimes by the priests who sealed them. The people who were supposed to protect eternity were the ones destroying it for money. Because even in a civilization obsessed with death, life still mattered more. Survival mattered more. Gold you can spend matters more than gold buried forever. So the whole system was a lie. The pharaohs didn't live forever. Their bodies were destroyed, their treasures stolen, their souls abandoned. But the system continued for 3,000 years. Why? Because the lie was more powerful than the truth. As long as people believed, as long as they feared, the system worked. The priests stayed rich, the pharaohs stayed divine, and the people stayed obedient. Building, working, dying, for a promise that was never kept. But something eventually broke it. Not rebellion, not invasion, new beliefs. Christianity arrived, then Islam, offering different answers. Different afterlives, ones that didn't require pyramids, didn't need priests, didn't cost everything you owned, just faith, and suddenly, the old system collapsed. The temples closed, the priests lost power, the pyramids became ruins, forgotten, buried in sand, for over 1,000 years, until archaeologists dug them up and found something strange. The civilization that worshipped death, that spent everything on eternity, left almost nothing about life. We know how they buried their dead, but not how they lived. We know their temples, but not their homes. We know their gods, but not their people. Because in Egypt, life was temporary, death was forever, so they invested in forever and forgot about now. That's the dark truth. Egypt didn't fall because of war, or famine, or conquest. It fell because it stopped living, stopped innovating, stopped adapting. While other civilizations built armies, built trade networks, built futures, Egypt built tombs, bigger tombs, better tombs, more elaborate ways to preserve the past, while the world moved forward. And eventually the world left them behind, conquered by Persians, then Greeks, then Romans, then Arabs. Each time, Egypt didn't fight back, couldn't fight back, because a civilization that serves the dead can't defend the living. That's the lesson. Belief is power, but belief can also be a prison. Egypt proved it. They built the greatest monuments in history, achieved immortality, not for their pharaohs, but for their obsession. We still remember them, still marvel at the pyramids, still wonder how they did it, but we don't remember them for their achievements. We remember them for their tombs, for their death cult, for the civilization that forgot to live. That's the price of worshiping death. You get eternity, but you lose everything else. Egypt chose eternity and paid for it, with 3,000 years of stagnation, of wasted potential, of human lives spent serving corpses, all for a lie. That death matters more than life, that the afterlife is worth more than the present, that eternity is worth any sacrifice. But here's the final twist. Maybe they were right. Not about the afterlife, about immortality. Because 4,500 years later, we're still talking about them, still visiting their tombs, still obsessed with their death. The pharaohs wanted to live forever, and in a way they did. Not in paradise, but in our minds, in our fascination, in our fear. That's the real power of Egypt. Not what they built, but what they made us believe. That death can be conquered, that eternity is possible, that if you just build something big enough, grand enough, permanent enough, you'll never be forgotten. And they were right. We haven't forgotten. We never will. Because Egypt didn't just worship death, they weaponized it, turned it into control, into power, into immortality. And that's the darkest truth of all. The system worked. Not the way they intended, but it worked. The civilization that died 2,000 years ago still lives in stone, in sand, in our nightmares. The eternal empire, built on death, powered by fear, remembered forever. That's ancient Egypt, not a civilization, a warning of what happens when death becomes more important than life, when belief becomes control, when eternity costs everything. And we're still learning that lesson, still building our own pyramids, still chasing our own immortality, still sacrificing the present for a future that may never come. Egypt showed us how, and we're still following.